What's one thing, or more than one thing, that you wish people knew about mental health? Or what's a misunderstanding that you think that people have about mental health care?
I think a misunderstanding is that I would like people to know that there is a difference between mental illness and the status of our mental health.
Do you think that sometimes people have unrealistic expectations of their mental health?
I always warn my patients the first time I meet them that I'm kind of a nag. I mean, here's the truth of it. And I make sure that I want everyone to know that in my nagging, that's not a place of judgment.
You don't have to be, just like you're talking about with mental health, you don't have to have a mental illness to work on your mental health. You don't have to be physically ill. And I think that's part of our system is we just have beat into people's heads that you have to be really sick before you go see a medical provider.
Absolutely. I think it's just the misunderstanding that it's one entity. Like mental health is one entity, physical health is one entity, when really, I'd like to even throw in spiritual health. It all does make us who we are.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Take It Back Method, the show where we talk about what it really takes to reclaim your health, your energy, and your life. I'm your host, Joe Debban, and today's episode is a special one. My guest is someone I've known for a long time. We flew together in Air Medical. We've cared for patients side by side, and now we're walking similar paths, but in a very different way. Emily Hensley is a mental health nurse practitioner who's not only incredibly skilled, but also deeply compassionate, intuitive, and grounded in real lived experience. She works with trauma, resilience, and transformation. And let me tell you, she gets it in a way that few people do. In this episode, we talk about what it means to come back from hard things, how mental and physical health are dependent on each other, and what healing actually looks like in the real world. It's powerful, and I think it's going to hit home for a lot of you. So, if you've ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, or like you've lost a part of yourself, this one's for you. Let's dive in. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Joe.
Let's start here. Let's just start with your story. So if someone asked you what you do and how you ended up doing it, what would you tell them?
I don't know. I'm going to give you the short version of that, though, because, I got to say that I've been in healthcare for like 2.5, pushing 3 decades, close to it, because I started off as a nurse's aide in a nursing home.
I was going to say, you don't seem old enough to have done 3 decades.
I was 12 when I started to work. I'm sure of it. I chose nursing as a career because I'm like, sure, that sounds great because there's 12-hour shifts. It's a guaranteed job. Landed in the ICU and then transitioned quickly to flying, of course, is where I met you.
Right.
And I loved that. I loved the emergency care. Mental health, though, has always been a piece of me. I can remember when I was probably in 5th grade, my grandmother took all of her grandchildren to Williamsburg, Virginia. And she took us all to this old psychiatric hospital. And when I was, however old you are, in 5th grade, I just was so saddened by the history of mental health, how people were treated. And I probably made it in that hospital with my grandmother for about, seriously, like 10 minutes. And I just couldn't take it anymore because my heart hurt so bad that anyone would be treated like this. So throughout my life, then, I've had people who are very important to me that have struggled significantly with mental health struggles, and I was impacted with that. It was just a part of my life growing up. Not necessarily that I struggled at that time with mental health, but I was exposed to people who did struggle. Right. So here I am working in emergency services and finding like I enjoyed my job, but also at the same time wanting something more. And in ER, of course, you would see, even in flying, it doesn't matter. You would see all these people coming in that in that moment we were treating them for their physical health. They were in a state of acute crisis because of their physical health. But bottom line, what I started seeing consistently with people, with patients that would come in, with patients that we would fly, is that underneath of that was this chronic state of not being mentally well.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling honestly annoyed, some anger, when we would have what we would call frequent flyers in the emergency room come in, and a lot of them were morbidly obese. And the comments that even the healthcare staff would make, and I'm not saying that their heart isn't in what they do. You know, sometimes emergency room comes with some not great humor. I get it. But again, I kept seeing these individuals and their morbid obesity or their underlying chronic physical health struggles. And underneath of that surface existed this long-term mental health problem. And I wanted to go back to school. And at the time, I wanted to do something different. So I randomly, at the time, chose to be hey, why not be a psychiatric nurse practitioner? Why not? Because I felt like I had the care to go into that area.
So, okay. And I was going to ask you if there was a certain time in your life that drew you to mental health, but it seems like it's been
all of it.
Yeah, all of that together. What's one thing, or more than one thing, that you wish people knew about mental health, or what's a misunderstanding that you think that people have about mental health care?
I think a misunderstanding is that I would like people to know that there is a difference between mental illness and the status of our mental health. That's two different areas that people have this feeling that mental health is a place without struggle. Mental health is not actually a place without struggle. We live our entire life with struggle, and so mental health is going to fluctuate. Our mental health is going to be fluid throughout the course of our life. But as we struggle, as we make gains with our mental health, there is a difference between that and someone with a chronic and persistent mental illness, such as schizophrenia
or
bipolar
something.
disorder.
Sure.
You know, people who have reoccurring major depressive episodes, obsessive compulsive disorder, the classic mental illnesses is a different place than mental health.
That makes sense, right? Here's what I wish people knew. So when I first meet people and they sit down with me, I usually just open it up for them and I'll say, this is a safe place. And if you could change something about your health or your body, what would you change? And what I wish everyone knew is that we're all broken.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When you give people a safe spot, and I know that you feel this because this is probably your everyday, but you give people a safe spot and you just let them put it all out there. We're all broken, so you're not alone. You know what I mean?
I think so many people need to hear that, basically those words, that every single one of us are in a state of variable health throughout the course of our life. So when someone is struggling with their physical health, that's also going to influence their mental health.
Yeah.
That it all does. I think it's just the misunderstanding that it's one entity. Like mental health is one entity, physical health is one entity. When really, I'd like to even throw in spiritual health. It all does make us who we are.
So how would you, for the patients that you work with, How do you define healing for them? What does healing look like?
Mm. I kind of start off a lot of times with patients, though, of asking them what their definition, what
Mhm.
they are looking for.
What's good look like
What
for
do they
them?
want to feel?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times in life, when we don't know exactly what that is that we're aiming for,
Yeah.
we will continue to feel that, I'll call it discontent, that unsettled feeling. And so the healing the healing won't come until patients have or any individual has identified, what am I aiming for? What do I want? What is my goal? How should I feel? Sometimes my work with patients is honestly an adjustment of their expectations, because I always say to people, we can't have the expectation of not feeling sadness. We can't have the expectation of not feeling anger, anxiety, lack of motivation, because we're supposed to feel all of that. We're made to feel those emotions. And so sometimes part of the healing process is the challenge of, okay, so give me a number of where your sadness is at right now. They say 6. Where would you like your sadness to be at? What is the expectation of your sadness to be at? And they tell me 1. I'm like, that's okay for like a day or 2,
Right.
but you're not going to live in that state of
Yeah.
1.
Yeah.
And same thing goes for anxiety, in the sense that, anxiety, there's purpose in
Mhm.
anxiety.
Sometimes we need to be anxious.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as far as healing, I think first it has to decide about, what is my goal? How do I want to feel? And then moving towards that gradually. In my office, I work with people who, going back to what I originally said, I work with people who have mental illness, but people also come to me that don't feel well with their mental health. And that's okay, in the sense that I'm still appropriate for them to come to. Just like in your work, I imagine that there's people who come to you with a physical illness, but then there's also people that come to you that don't feel well physically.
Yeah.
And then it's sorting through what is the source of that, and dissecting that a little bit so that you can be of help to them.
I think I wish more people would seek health from mental health professionals, if for no other reason than there's power in being seen, if you know what I mean. So like oftentimes, I refer people to you, my own family members even, and they'll come back at the first visit. And I know that they're not fixed, quote unquote, but they feel better because it's like, I see you and you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
That piece of it. And for that reason alone, I wish more people would just have somebody that they can talk to, so they get that, they feel seen and heard, kind of thing. Because I don't think we get that outside of there.
No, I would agree. And it's also the same as far as, now I'm going to lose my thought here for a moment. I was going to come up with something I wanted to say that along those lines. It'll come back to me.
Let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
How do you define mental health, or mental wellness, I should say, for you? What's that look like?
It is a constant adjustment. I mean, as far as what I define it as is, am I comfortable? Am I content? Am I settled overall? Meaning, it's a very subjective state. And I think that it varies per person, and it's going to vary for me as well, as far as the demands of life on the day-to-day, the stressors of life on the day-to-day are going to influence where my mental health is at. And it is the ability to adjust and ability to sit sometimes in, well, I'm struggling today. My mental health is, I know that I am okay when I recognize I'm not feeling very well today mentally, but it's okay. Tomorrow's a different day. I'll do better. And it's just letting go of the need to, I guess, control how I'm feeling with my emotions and just sitting in it for a moment of not feeling the best today.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
I think, do you think sometimes people have unrealistic expectations of their mental health? Like, I need to feel good all the time. Because I do see that sometimes in my patients as we try to build better lifestyle habits, eating better, moving better, that type of thing. And, I don't feel good, so I can't do that. And there needs to be a little bit of, you're not going to feel good every day. And being able to do the things you need to do despite how you feel. I don't know if that makes sense, but
I always warn my patients the first time I meet them that I'm kind of a nag. I mean, here's the truth of it. And I make sure that I want everyone to know that in my nagging, that's not a place of judgment. That's understanding of where they're at. They're struggling. They feel broken. And people need to know that we see that brokenness, that no one comes to anything being, oh, I'm perfect, I'm great. But the fact of pushing past that and recognizing this is going to be a journey. This is, I think initially, not everyone. I would imagine that you have this experience too, that some people come and they're very hopeful for a fix.
Yeah.
Like, I just want this to be better. And the recognition of this is going to take a lot of different things. Mental health care is one of it. Physical health wellness is another area of it. I encourage people to eliminate the word motivated out of their vocabulary. No one ever really wakes up and feels motivated. I'm motivated to go work out. No, I don't wake up and I don't feel motivated. It's discipline. So motivation is a feeling. Discipline is an action. I'm going to discipline myself to get my tail up and work out. So I think as far as work goes with that is recognizing that the truth of it is that emotions can be irrational. Emotions, we can sit in them a little bit too much, and sometimes we have to push back it and make it be more of a behavioral change rather than driven by emotion.
perfect. I'm gonna change subjects just a little bit. Okay.
Do it.
So I hope it's okay that I disclose this, but you've been a patient of ours here. What made you seek the type of care we give, which is just wellness care?
I think it's the recognition. Well, okay, I'm going to be honest. I really didn't. First of all, I just thought I really like Joe. I trust the guy.
So it was pity.
No, it was not pity. It was not pity. I've always known that you have a way to feel, you present yourself as people can feel comfortable with you. That I had some areas in my own life that I was not quite content with. And I needed to have an open and honest conversation about that. And yes, I had the fortunate background of knowing you, but because I know you, I knew that I could basically dump this as far as where my struggles were at, what was on my mind, without that, perhaps that concern of judgment.
Yeah.
And, I know that that's an area that you strive to meet. And, when in the past, and why I continue to refer patients to you, a lot of that is because I know that you're going to meet someone where they're at. And that is the point of all of this as far as wellness is meeting them where they're at. So my initial was just like everything else in my life seems to be like, let's just see what Joe has to say about this. I wasn't physically feeling the best that I felt like I could. I wasn't mentally feeling the best that I felt like I could. Again, going back to the overall picture of wellness, I wasn't ill. I didn't have a mental illness. I didn't have a physical illness. I just knew that I could feel better than what I was feeling at the time. I was putting in a lot of other areas into it. I mean, I was doing all the things, and I still wasn't feeling how I wanted to feel. And yes, a little bit on a whim, I thought, I bet Joe can help me with this. So that's where I ended up coming to you.
I think I love that. Not the part that
that I'm loving up on you.
Right, not that piece of it. But you don't have to be, just like you're talking about with mental health. You don't have to have a mental illness to work on your mental health. You don't have to be physically ill. And I think that's part of our system is we just have beat into people's heads that you have to be really sick before you go see a medical provider.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel, and this, I'm not saying that this is across the board, but there seems to be some pushback perhaps on different areas of, I feel like everybody has a lane in life. Like straight up medical providers sometimes have some pushback on what I do with my profession.
Sure.
As some medical providers have some pushback perhaps in the focus on overall wellness. There's a place for it all. And I think that that's what's important to note is medical providers, we need medical providers for the standard traditional medical model of illness. Medical providers really do not have the opportunity right now. Their schedules are all packed. They don't have the opportunity to really sit with patients and discuss wellness.
Yeah.
Their lane right now, I'm not saying all of them want to be in that lane, but their professional lane a lot of times is illness. Whereas I think my lane and your lane a lot of times can be with wellness, of physical wellness and mental health wellness. And you're exactly right. People don't come to me, as I said before, not everyone that comes to me has a mental illness. They don't feel well mentally.
Right. Perfect. I think I was actually going to ask you that question. Like, you refer people to me, I refer people to you.
Mm-hmm.
What makes, what do you think makes our work complement each other? And I think that's exactly what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times when I refer people to you, those are individuals who have been on this long struggle. They come to me and they have been on several different medicines for their mental health. And, they have provided some benefit, but really not much benefit. Or they come to me on a long list of medication that they have continued for 10 years and they still do not feel well mentally. And so then it's the importance of, this sounds terrible, but I have said this before with a degree of sincere compassion, is you're on so many different medications for your mental health.
Yeah.
Do you feel better?
Right. Yes.
With taking all of this medication?
That's so true.
And so many times the answer is no.
Yeah.
And then it's the hard but truth of, sometimes I'll just respond of, you can be doing just as poorly on less medication.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times when I have this picture of lots of different medication that have been tried, and they're doing a lot of the other things. They're doing therapy, they're doing physical activity, but they're still not feeling well. that's a lot of times when I say, let's look at some other areas. Let's look at if there is there a missing piece of your physical
Yeah.
wealth, your physical health that you maybe we need to look at. Maybe there's a missing piece. I tell people that they're overall we're bottom line, we're all looking for the healthiest version of ourselves. I tell people that you think of it like yourself, like you're a puzzle. Your overall well-being is a puzzle. I don't know what your puzzle pieces are, but sometimes you got to switch out a puzzle piece. Sometimes you have to, that's not fitting, it's not working, take it out, put something else in. That's when I refer them to you to see is there something along the lines of your overall wellness, some underlying something's off that could be contributing to where you're at.
And it's the same way for me. When we look at people's overall wellness, sometimes one of the pieces of the puzzle that's missing is just they can't get their mental health under control in the way they need to. And I think that's just in general, the part of our healthcare system. There's many broken parts.
Absolutely.
But a huge part is that healing doesn't happen in silos. It happens when different specialties link arms and take our patient and restore them as a whole person. And that's broken.
Absolutely.
Everybody wants to stay in their own silo.
Yep.
They want to treat what they treat. And people, like I said, they don't get treated as a whole person.
Which I think that's okay to treat what they treat, but then also understand that there's lanes outside of that.
Right.
That patients absolutely need.
Yeah.
That it is not a narrow box of, go have a physical once a year, exercise 30 minutes a day, and you should be good to go. It is a collective effort, a lot of times with a couple of different providers in order to aid in that improvement.
For you personally, let's take it back to you for a second. But as you've gone through your wellness journey, right? Anything surprising? Anything helpful?
Well, it's all been helpful. Honestly, it's all been a little surprising.
We have to be more specific.
I know, and that's really hard to pinpoint. Bottom line is that I just like how I feel.
Yeah.
I like the person that I am today, and I know the struggles that I've had in the past. I know that while I still think I'm broken, I feel put back together.
Yeah,
and I know that I have not always felt where I'm at now. And that is kind of still a vague statement. But at the same time, I can say with confidence that I feel good and I like where I'm at. And I know that mentally and physically, I didn't feel this way 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm going to be on the wrong side of 45 pretty soon. That it's amazing to me that I can say, I feel better mentally and physically than I did when I was 35.
Good.
That's pretty awesome.
That's really awesome. This is what I see in myself and in my patients. I think people get on this downward spiral of, and anything can trigger it. Perhaps their health changes. Maybe they get a little heavier, and then they feel a little sadder. So then they move a little less, and then their joints ache, and then they feel a little worse, and they just this slow deterioration into poor mental health, poor physical health, and I don't do anything special other than just turn that around. You help their mental health a little bit. I help them lose a little weight. That helps their mental health, and people who feel better want to take better care of themselves, and then they move more and their joints hurt less.
Absolutely.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Sometimes so often it's just turning the train around.
Yes, 100%.
And I think that a lot of times when someone comes into me the first time, I want them, say they come to me they have concerns with their overall mental health. They don't necessarily, they don't have a severe or persistent mental illness. But one of the things that I want them to know real soon into our relationship is that medication is a tool. Medication for their mental health is a tool.
100%.
And I don't want anyone to think that if I start this medication, I'm going to be on this medication for the rest of my life. No, that's not the case. I tell them, while my job is primarily to prescribe medication for mental health, I equally want to deprescribe. As soon as we get to that point where they're feeling better, medication can be decreased and stopped.
Yeah. I love that because I'm the same way. Medication is a tool, weight loss medicine. If done correctly, you can get off it at some point. And some people need it all the time, just like some people need their mental health medication all the time. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I love that.
But it's another piece of what I was talking about with the puzzle, is that finding what those pieces are and then, readjusting as necessary.
What would you say? There's somebody watching us, right? And they feel like they've lost themselves or they're stuck somewhere. What would you tell them?
I would ask them what they would say to their friend that may have been, say their friend was sitting in front of them, telling them that same statement. What would you say to your friend?
Yeah.
Most of the time, every single time, if I've asked that question to patients, they say something along the lines of, it will get better.
Yeah.
I'm here for you. You just got to be patient with yourself. You just got to make some adjustments and it will get better. Understanding that where they're at right now is not a good place, but also recognizing what we have said, that people are broken. We have to extend the same grace to ourselves as we would our friends, our neighbors down the street. We can be so critical of ourselves, so almost hateful to ourselves, and get in this really dark place where we forget, as an individual, I have to give myself the same grace and forgiveness as I need to give everyone else.
What if they feel like that, like they've lost hope or they're in a really dark spot? First steps. What do they do to get out of that spot?
I think first steps is taking the emotion out of it, treating yourself real formal. First steps is identifying, obviously the basic stuff, the basic, am I a safety concern? We're going to talk about basics there.
Yeah, right.
Obviously you have to keep yourself safe.
Yeah.
So it is going back to taking the emotions out of it, recognizing I'm not well right now, making it a formal process. What do I need to do to kind of climb out of this? What kind of steps do I need to do to start feeling better? What is the discipline that I need to put into place so I don't feel like this?
Do you feel like people sometimes look at it as a whole, like they're deep in this spot and they have 100 things that is holding them down, and they don't have to worry about that whole piece? Like you said, it's just that first, the next step. What's the next thing I need to do?
Yes, it's the right now. I tell people to stop looking at the big picture of things, because you're not going to change. The big picture of things didn't happen overnight. The big picture of things isn't going to be fixed overnight either. What area can you focus on right now? What's something different that you can do right now to head in the right direction? People's mental health is also influenced by a whole lot of outside noise as well. That's a little bit different, mental health versus physical wellness in a way, because our relationships can be very damaging to our mental wellness. So that complicates that picture a little bit. But bottom line is that the recognition of, you don't have to feel like this. This is not forever. You have not always felt where you're at right now. You will not always feel where you're at right now. This is not a permanent status. mental health is fluid. Give yourself some time, give yourself some grace. Put an action plan in so that you slowly climb out. It is absolutely a hole that people feel like they're suffocating, that they are paddling in water that they can't possibly find a way out of.
I use the analogy, you're not broken, you're buried. You're buried
Yeah.
under exhaustion, your responsibilities, mistakes you've made, your
Mhm.
own body
Mhm.
sometimes. And it's our job to just give them the tools to dig themselves out from those things.
Yeah,
But they have to do it themselves.
absolutely.
One shovel at a time.
And that's the nagging that I often do. I do.
I need a
And
nagger in my
and
life.
I do try, and I
Right.
tell them, and the truth of it is that I nag on myself too. Like I'm very everything that I tell my patients to implement, I for sure make myself implement the same. Am I 100% in that implementation? No. Do I expect them to be 100% in that implementation? Absolutely not. But bottom line is that it's throwing when you're not feeling well physically or mentally. What do I throw at this? And you are basically at a war against the negative where you're at, and you throw anything and everything possible at it that will help you dig out of that hole.
So, last question. You mentioned that you're about to be on the north side of 45. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yes.
46 in June.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So tell me this, for the women, right?
Yeah.
What would you tell them because you're in that sweet spot between perimenopause and
Oh,
menopause.
this is a sweet spot, huh?
Or maybe a hole. Remember, I talked about being buried. How do you navigate that mental wise? Like what things do you need to do specific to that? Is hormone therapy important? What would be your recommendation?
My recommendation is information.
Yeah, I
That
love that.
I tell people a lot, even when I send someone to you, I tell them you don't necessarily have to implement. I mean,
Yeah.
that Joe's going to have perhaps maybe some recommendations. And I tell that to people when I visit with them about, what medication for mental health could be of some benefit. Our job is to inform.
Yes.
Our job is to say, these are some options that you could do. And to help, if they have questions along the way, I think just information and informing them, informing anyone as far as what could be contributing to this change that I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And sometimes simply just knowledge is information that people find as comfort. And that's all some people need. Now, some people, obviously, they will make some decisions as far as acting upon the information that you or I have given them. And then, of course, we would guide them in that process. But if you're waiting through this time of, as we get older, you have no data to it. You
Yeah.
have no data other than, I don't feel great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so gaining data helps you at least understand why you're feeling the way you are.
Yeah.
And then you can make some decisions based upon that.
Don't you think that's another failing of our healthcare system of just, and it's not just men or women. It's both sexes as we transition through different parts of our life. Nobody tells you what to expect, and there's no data.
Yes, I just had this conversation with a patient the other day that she said, I just want someone to sit me down and tell me,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to expect? Of course, as providers, we have to, like with your work world, you have to do some tests to figure out where some underlying levels are at. But once they have that information, they are better equipped to have some understanding in the process of it.
I think Is there anything else you want people to know about mental health or wellness?
I don't think so, other than I think that no matter what phase of life you're in, it doesn't matter the phase, it is a journey. And where, I'm in my current journey, I see in my office adolescents having another subset of influences, or, early adulthood, middle-aged, later adulthood. There is a struggle that presents in every phase. And so it's the recognition that no matter what phase that you're in, seeking understanding of that phase, seeking care in that phase, sometimes just the recognition of this is tough is really all that people are looking for.
Would you do it again? Become a mental health nurse practitioner?
Absolutely, I would.
Yeah.
When I was in school, when I was grad school, because I was flying, of course, at the time,
Right.
I had so much criticism about why are you going into mental health when, you have all this emergency care
Right.
knowledge.
Yeah.
And I had no mental health knowledge. I had no textbook knowledge. I had practical knowledge. I knew that I wanted to connect with people, and I knew the experiences that my family members had had, and I knew that it was an area that I felt, the whole cliche, that I felt like I could make a difference. And so that's truly the only reason why I chose mental health. But yes, I would absolutely do it again.
I wish that's the message we need to get out there too. We need more providers like you. And I appreciate you for all that you do on behalf of my family and my patients and our community. And I appreciate you coming on my show.
Well, absolutely. But truly, though, you offer your own area that isn't really offered in this area.
Yeah.
Well,
I would say what I do, there needs to be more of too.
There absolutely does.
Yeah.
And there also needs to be more understanding of the importance of it. Wellness is the prevention of illness.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can all step into that lane and all be open to that lane a little bit more, I think that the actual occurrence of illness would be significantly less.
Yeah. I could go on and on about
I know,
that.
me too.
I'll save that for the next one. Thanks, Em.
Yeah.
Awesome.